Hey, how about another round of applause? How cool is that? I'm an Arizona Wildcat, but that is really cool. Okay, we're going to reconfigure the stage here for our next. Oh, they're already at it, so give them a moment here. An AI algorithm walks into a bar and says, I'll have what everyone else is having. Okay, that one didn't go well. What does an AI do after a breakup? Machine yearning. There we go. Okay. What's an AI's favorite music? Algorithms. Okay. All right. One of my writers is in London right now, Shakira Sawani. Some of you know her, but she's still texting me right and left. She usually sits at my right and is feeding my ear with some witticisms. But anyway, thank you, Shakira. So we begin with an exciting fireside chat on the road to smart cities. Please welcome back Dr. Nick Valles and join me in welcoming Randy Kendrick, founder and CEO of Xebec Realty.
Morning, Nick.
Good morning, Randy, and welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just to give you a quick background about Randy, obviously, before we get started. I mean, when you think about every banner you see where the Institute is named under Andrew Kendrick, Randy graciously endowed the Institute about 4 years ago with a $20 million gift. So he's been a great supporter, good friend, and we certainly appreciate your generosity. Thank you.
Happy to do it.
So Randy, let's get into it. I mean, I talked about all the data point, the nuances of why. We talked about the 20th century of the robust manufacturing that the US we had at the beginning of the century, leading the entire industrial revolutions. We saw the investment coming in advanced manufacturing. Size up this picture, about $1.7 trillion so far, projected to be close to $3 trillion. How does this advanced manufacturing infrastructure can be built up, and what is it going to look like?
Well, it's gonna take time. Number one, I think we have one of the largest advanced manufacturing campuses in the United States with our 3,300 acre AMLC. We call it the Switch, and what we're doing there is we're repurposing infrastructure that was built by Alcoa in 1951. And so that the great industrial complexes that we had in the United States, whether that be steel plants or aluminum smelters or auto plants, the backbone infrastructure still exists. The power lines and the high voltage switches, the rail infrastructure. A lot of it's been taken out, a lot of it's, but it can be put back in as well. And so when you're looking at a mega site, you know, whether you're in Tennessee or Texas or any other state, there are mega sites available, and they're the remnants of what was a huge industrial complex back in the early part of the century.
So let's talk about it. I mean, this is really for the context purposes. When you talk about establishing the infrastructure, it is a huge undertaking, to Randy's point, right? There's a role the government plays, there's a role that industry plays, but there's a role in which public-private partnerships comes together in building this gigantic undertaking. And let's just keep some numbers in mind. I kept talking about $1.7 trillion commitment. This thing does not happen overnight. It takes years in making and decades in execution. You have this huge opportunity in Central Texas. But before we get into the Sandow project, let's play the clip so that audience has a sort of a backdrop of what Switch is going to look like. So can we cue up the video, and hopefully it works through.
Change.
Yeah.
It's the only constant in life. A never-ending journey of discovery and innovation, inspiring us to go beyond today for a better tomorrow. Welcome to The Switch, a world-class advanced manufacturing and logistics campus at the heart of the Texas Triangle. What was once the engine of industry is now a canvas for new ambition. This is a destination being reimagined and brought back to life, primed for today and built for tomorrow. 3,300 acres of first-class manufacturing and logistics space, with infrastructure, site preparation, and tenant construction fully underway. We're bringing vision into reality. Cutting-edge sustainability, best-in-class specifications, and maximum flexibility. Fueled by a robust labor pool and world-class talent, enabling your business to thrive. All of this comes together in the new master plan community of Sandow Lakes, where waterside living, abundant nature, and diverse amenities surround a vibrant downtown. This is where ambition and progress connect. Make the switch. Connect to tomorrow.
Let's give a round of applause. What else? This is an ambitious vision. It's a huge undertaking. How do you see this being executed?
Yeah, it is and it isn't. To give everyone history of this place that I bought back in 21, it was originally the largest smelter in the world. Alcoa built it in 1951. And they opened up a coal mine. You know, smelters always locate near their source of energy because you have to heat the alumina up to 1,600 degrees to smelt it. So in this case, it was a lens of lignite coal that ran through this part of the country. And so they opened a 17,500 acre strip mine, mined 250 million tons of coal, and made 28 pounds of aluminum every second for 50 years. And it was truly one of America's greatest feats. It's kind of the tail end of our manufacturing greatness. You know, when we entered World War II as a country, we were a monster because we had the most modern factories in the world. And that was just the reality. And we had incredible, abundant natural resources, right? And, you know, we watched that. I watched it. I sat courtside as that industrial complex got hollowed out. I can't tell you how many manufacturing plants I've torn down in my career. You know, started in Vernon in 1986, and I tore down the original Alcoa foundry in Los Angeles. So now but what happens is, as technology moves ahead, let's take this smelter, for example. It had a 50-year life on it, okay? At the end of 50 years, you have to retool. You've worn out your equipment, okay? But the thing is, technology has moved so far in that 50 years, you can really go wherever you want. Now, when our manufacturing base got hollowed out, the cost to make anything, a very high percentage of that cost was labor, okay? Because the machines weren't that efficient, okay? So after, you know, post-World War II, the corporations moved to areas where there was abundant labor and was inexpensive labor, Southeast Asia.
Yep.
And so that's how we got hollowed out. And the rise of globalization, the invention of the box, you know, all those things played a role in that. But the reason I absolutely know the United States is on the precipice of a manufacturing renaissance. Let's take this plant, for example. It had 3,500 employees and made 28 pounds of aluminum every second. They brought in 3 unit trains a week of alumina, and they shipped out 2 unit trains of ingots. A unit train is 120 cars long with a single commodity on it. The containers are what we talk about most today. They built a plant in Iceland for the hydroelectric power. It makes almost twice as much aluminum and has less than 90 employees. So what everyone has to understand, as we bring advanced manufacturing back to America, the machines do most of the work. You know, it's the same advantage that and we were talking about this morning, Nick, the same advantage that Germany and Japan had after World War II. All the factories got bombed out, right? And then we helped them rebuild their factories, and then they built their economy on an export economy, right?
Absolutely.
And they had the most modern factories. Well, you roll it ahead 50 years. A lot of the manufacturing plants around the world are more than 50 years old.
Yeah, so that's a great point, Randy, right? So if you think about even Japan today,
right,
and Germany, the term that we talked about earlier this morning over the breakfast, called the dark factories. Dark factories meaning the factories that you can turn the lights off and the production is still going. Japan was at 1999 to 2011, Japan was the biggest dark factory producer. So if you go to the Toyota plant, which I did in Osaka, they'd flip the switch on at 4 in the morning, 6, 7 people walk in, do the inspection, switch gets turned off, and the production runs. Right. That's an advanced manufacturing when you talk about how one can actually become less dependent. Obviously, we'll talk about the human capital at some point. But you envision this advanced manufacturing to be driven mostly by the technology.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I know it's coming. I'll give you an example. You know, when you have a place like this, we have a total of 33,000 acres. It's 50 square miles. If you put it on the West Coast, it would go from West Coast to Mesa to Dana Point. It's 18 miles long. But when you have a piece like this, some of the most advanced companies in the world just knock on your door and say, can we tell you what we're doing? We heard what you're doing. Can we tell you what we're doing? And an example of that was the Porsche engineers showed up in my conference room there at Sandow. And they sat down and, you know, German engineers, they're serious as a heart attack. I'll tell you, man, these guys are serious. And they were describing to me this 3 million square foot factory that they had designed to build housing units, but to not build housing units the conventional way, not build housing units, even, you know, you've seen these building blocks that they build inside of warehouses, but it's still conventionally built. This is rolled steel, aggregate, and cement come into that factory, housing units come out the other side. And there's 10,000 engineers at Porsche. 5,000 just build auto plants around the world. Now, Porsche has 800 options on it. So every car that rolls off the Porsche Stuttgart line is a custom car. So they have perfected manufacturing to that level. The other 5,000 over the past 20 years have gone to different sectors around the world. And they built 220 factories over the past 20 years. And every factory has done exactly what they said it would do. And they told me the last sector in the world is housing units. And this factory rolls off a freestanding home every 45 minutes. It comes in 5 pieces. It's put on a flatbed truck. It's taken to the site. It's erected within 4 hours. And it is fully functional. And it's a smart house, too. It's got a Siemens brain in it. And it's connected to a microgrid. And so when they compared what the labor was, conventional labor, and waste, okay, in conventional construction, waste is about 40%. It's between 30 and 40%. Labor is about 30%. Labor is now 5%, and waste is less than 5%.
Wow.
And so those are the types of efficiencies that you can gain with advanced manufacturing supported by AI and modern robotics.
So that's a very interesting point. When you think about the waste, the synonymous of that is sustainability. We're consuming less resources, making a bigger impact without using a lot of resources, right? The video that we played, unfortunately, ended a minute earlier than we wanted to. Carl Sagan, my hero, a brilliant physicist, right? And he talks about this whole cosmic force. You and I, when we first met, your standard line, if I can paraphrase you, was a cosmic river that connects how we interact. So I think you always had that sort of a cosmic ways of looking at it. And your world, this entire infrastructure, building the cities, AMLC, carbon neutral and sustainable. And you're in the middle of Texas.
Right.
That's oxymoron, in a way.
It kind of is.
Right? So how do you pull that off?
You know, the site is magic in so many ways. One, it's just its history and the economic engine that it was. But it was also, Alcoa spent $350 million reclaiming the coal mine. And they created 14 lakes. And the original lake was Lake Alcoa. And that was a cooling lake for the smelter and for the power plants that ran the smelter. But as they mined down the 18 miles of the spine, they created these beautiful lakes because they had to replace the coal that was extracted, the cubic volume of coal, with something else. And so they created these 180-foot deep lakes. They're clear, beautiful, full of fish. So they've done things. They did things no one else could do, right? Because they're Alcoa, and I got to inherit all of that stuff. But the best thing about it, the only two master plans in Texas, I don't know who here knows Texas very well, but the only other two master plans in Texas you can compare Sandow Lakes to is the Woodlands and Alliance. And now Alliance, the Woodlands was not in the ETJ of Houston, so they got to do what they wanted to do. Okay, they didn't have to play by the rules of another city. Alliance had to play by the rules of Fort Worth. And so, you know, the difficult thing as a developer, and especially when you're looking at something this big in a master plan, is the master plans, the planning departments and building departments in established cities, legacy cities in the United States, those rules were drawn up 100 years ago. Okay. And they're all based post World War II, all the growth west, where I grew up, you know, I was born in Nevada and raised here in Southern California. It was all based on the automobile. These freeway systems, these highway systems and everything. And today we get to think about not the automobile, but the mobility, right? What is the most efficient and safest mobility systems that we can deploy into it that make people feel safe? And also we want to build communities that are not defined by the roadway systems. You know, if you're in an automobile or you're in a freestanding home, you're in an isolation chamber, okay? And you don't really want to necessarily go out and walk around your neighborhood because you're just passing a bunch of driveways. Yep. And if you're in a car, it's an isolation chamber. What we're trying to do is build a walkable city. They call it a 15-minute city, where there are more dense villages and hamlets with a town center, and you can walk in 15 minutes to get anything you need. And so it encourages people to get out of their homes and walk, and that's good for health and wellness. And so on a lot of levels, but again, if we're in the ETJ of Austin, we'd have to play by Austin's rules. And since we're not, we're actually able to bring in some of the smartest minds when it comes to sustainable cities, like Dr. Carlo Rotti, who runs the Center for Sustainable Cities at MIT. Yep. We're able to bring in those minds and say, okay, how can we rethink what a city was? And a little bit of it is going back to the future. If you look at the small towns that were built in the 17 and 1800s in the Midwest on waterways, there was spaced about 20 miles apart, because that's about where you could ride on a horse in one day. And they had a town center, and it spread out from the town center because you had to walk or ride a horse in there. Okay. Again, that all got warped post World War II, Highway Bills Act. And so we're able to kind of go back to the future and say, okay, this is a cool way to live. You know, you knew your neighbors. and everyone in the community had a place, right? We talk about housing attainability. I do not talk about workforce housing, but I want in each of one of the villages, they'll be punctuated by, we have 9,000 acres of open space in our master plan. And so if you want to get out in the country, you'll be able to get out in the country very quickly. But we want a place for the policemen to live right there, the firemen, the teachers, the people that make our coffee in the morning. You know, we don't want them commuting in from 30 or 40 miles away because they have to be out in the hinterlands to afford a house. So when we talk about housing, we want it to be attainable at all levels. And so what you do is you start knocking down the cost of living in this place, right? If you're a teacher and you teach at the elementary school, if you don't have to have a car or two cars, that puts a lot more money to your bottom line, right? Because you have to buy the car, you have to maintain the car, you have to insure the car, you have to put gas in the car, and the car sits there 98% of the time unused. You know, so the automobile is not an efficient way of mobility, and so we're at that critical time in our evolution where not one but multiple technological innovations are occurring at the same time that will allow human beings moving forward to live differently than they lived before.
No, that's fantastic. But that actually, when we talk about smart cities,
Yeah.
you're talking about the next generation of concept where play, work, live all happens.
All happens right there.
Right there, but with very little carbon impact.
Very little carbon impact. And if the mobility system, and I'm enamored with this new system, it's called Whoosh. It looks like a gondola, but it's not a gondola. The cars actually ride on a cable that's stationary. Because I'm just a dumb industrial developer, and so I like to surround myself with people that are smarter than me. So I talked to Dr. Roddy and said, Carlo, from a sustainability standpoint, what are the key pillars of sustainability? To me, it is that we grow more food than we eat. Okay, that's the basics, and that we use our water in a sustainable way. We try to reuse our water and be as, because power and water are the two most important elements for the human race on the earth. And he said, Randy, one of the keys is efficient and hopefully free, but very affordable public transit. You've got to have great public transit. People have to get around without cars. So this new system, this Whoosh system, which actually came out of Google Sidewalk, the cars themselves, you have a series of cables up in the air. So again, it looks like a gondola, but the cars themselves are self-propelled on the cable. And they're totally green because they use solar panels to run the motor that runs the little cab that hangs off the thing. And you call one of these cars like you call an Uber. You don't go to a station and wait for the thing to come in. A bunch of people load on and they go in a straight line. You call and say, I want to go to this point, this address, and a car comes and gets you and takes you there.
Absolutely.
And then it goes on its next thing. And it's an incredible thing. I got to go to New Zealand because the first installation of this thing is in New Zealand, but they're looking at doing it in Sugar Land, Texas too. So those are the types of innovations that are happening in real time that we can weave into the fabric of this new metro.
So when you talk about the mobility and movements of people, you talk about the people mover within the cities that you're building. So by the way, when Randy talks about cities, he's building 3 cities, 50 million square feet of advanced manufacturing capability, and then the space for the creator.
Yeah, the metro itself, it's the size of San Francisco, actually. San Francisco happens to be 50 square miles. It will support 200 to 250,000 people when it's done. We'll have 45 elementary schools, I think 24 middle schools and 5 high schools. We'll bring the first health and wellness medical center campus to Central Texas. And we have a lot of other really fun things that we can do. We're working with Live Nation to design a an amphitheater they'll set on the lake that will celebrate all of the stuff the Alcoa says. So think about like Red Rock on industrial steroids.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of fun things that we're going to get to do, but it's going to take 30 to 40 years to do it.
Absolutely. But again, this is what we talked about in my speech. The truth and the nuances and the sort of the complexity. We have to sort of start to look at it. You won't hear the conversations we're having on the TV or in the news bites because it's not sexy. It's not appealing to everybody.
That's the thing. The infrastructure we need to drive our economy going forward isn't sexy. It's power generation, it's power transformers, it's distribution of super high voltage electricity. We need to go to a 780 kVA distribution system. So, and it's, it's the water resources, and it's, for the manufacturing, it's rail, it's class 1 rail connectivity. None of that stuff is sexy.
No, absolutely. So let's talk about power. You touched on something,
yeah.
And I want to talk about it. As we talked about the AI revolution, the power consumptions will be 18 times more than what we currently digest and ingest. Huge power demand with the data centers and running all these large language models. Give us a sense, when you talk about the power company within the Sandow project, what's that look like and how that's going to be carbon neutral?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things. I didn't really anticipate how important the electrical assets were. I knew we had the largest switch in Texas, the Sandow switch. That was built for Alcoa in 1951. Essential infrastructure to connect the north grid to the south grid. That's 1.5 gigawatts of power. And therefore, I have 2 of the largest Bitcoin miners in the world on my site mining Bitcoin every day, connected directly. But I knew, and I talked to Governor Abbott, that we needed more generation for the grid in Texas. Texas is the only state with a fully interstate grid. And so I told him I'd build a 1,200 megawatt combined cycle gas power station. I didn't know how daunting that would be. But luckily, I inherited in Tommy Hodges, one of the most brilliant electrical engineers in the country. He's been on site for 40 years and ran the power stations that were there and mined the coal, which is a lot more complex than doing a gas-fired station. So we are in the process. We're the only private developer in the world that Siemens allowed to actually reserve turbines. So we've got 2 of their 9,000 level turbines, and we'll build that. And that power station will come online in first quarter of 2028. And we're very much in the middle of the whole AI thing, right? When I bought the site, no one was talking about AI. And 18 months, it seems like 12 to 18 months ago, you couldn't pick up a paper and not read about it. And so we have over 1,000 acres of AI data center campus that we're in negotiations on right now. And so we will, I think at the end of the day, Sandow will be the AI data center capital of the United States.
Oh, that's great news. So Randy, let's bring this home. We talked about smart cities, smart people, smart planet. Let's talk about just quickly we have obviously the Masters of Science in Global Supply Chain Management. We have one of the largest cohort, 160 students coming in. Give us the sort of an outlook for human capital. What should they be prepared for to take on the next decade or 2?
This is kind of a glass half full or glass half empty, right? You've got a certain number of people that just say AI is going to take my job away from me, and I don't want that. And but I look at it as what we're going to do is I think the advanced manufacturing is going to be having a manufacturing job is going to be a good job again, because the factories are very clean. They're, you're standing at a particular node in the factory, and you're helping run that node, and it's a good job. And because labor as a percentage of anything it's making, the machines are making it. They can pay higher wages, and so it's going to be a good job again. And so I think we need to look at our labor force and think about the repurposing of the labor force, right? Now, the young people coming up, they're just going to go into that ecosystem, okay? But if you're working, somewhere else where maybe AI will take away your job, maybe you're a clerk or you're something that, AI can eliminate like that. I think you just need to look at being repurposed with time.
That's right. And to Randy's point, I think at the Institute, our mission is to really, how do we create the pipelines of educational modules, of certification, so to speak, that makes you a lifelong learner. What Randy said 3-4 years ago, when he bought the property and when I wrote the book for blockchains and supply chain, AI was there. AI has been there since 1968. Right? It wasn't talked about. It wasn't deployed as an application. Right? As soon as the first version of ChatGPT came about, everybody understood how influential it can be. Yeah. Right? And then we were just on the cusp of it. So you guys will actually have a brilliant time listening to some of the experts we're going to talk about. Randy, let's bring it home. Your thoughts about, let's start macro. United States of America, in today's landscape outlook, 10 years from now, and then Sandow. Give us a sense of where we're going.
Again, I think we're on the precipice of a manufacturing renaissance. When I started in 1986, we rode the wave of globalism. Okay, I was tearing down factories and I was building warehouses, in Los Angeles, here in Los Angeles. And that was a good business to be in. Starting in the early 2000s, globalization being part of it, but it was the rise of e-commerce, rise of Amazon. And that completely rewrote the rules of our business. What was a Class A building is no longer a Class A building in that world. And I think the next wave is going to be advanced manufacturing. I think that's going to be a huge demand driver in the industrial sector. And I think it's going to be a wonderful economic boom for the United States. I think we have to start making things here in the United States. Our GDP like you said, cannot rely on just consumption. We have to produce. And we have, our friends at the Board of Long Beach and LA are here. Those cans can, we can make very valuable stuff. America is an incredible brand. And we have a lot of products that we make. I mean, think about Fender guitar. And, we can export that to the world. And there's a lot of consumers around the world with eyeballs on screens that want to be part of that. Yeah. That want to be, maybe they want to own a Chevrolet. As long as the country doesn't have such a tariff that's so high on it, they could own a Chevrolet again, right?
Absolutely.
So that's what I think is going to happen, is that we're going to just manufacture a lot more stuff. It'll be good for our domestic economy. And it will be further bolstered by our creating an export economy. And the tariffs are part of creating that moat around our country that allows manufacturing to exist or to be nurtured along and to grow and to become something that is the primary driver of our economy, not consumerism.
Well, very good. So folks, hopefully this conversation, what Randy and I shared, is one data point. Again, when I said a drop in a bucket, simply what Randy is doing is a gigantic, once-in-a-century opportunity in terms of building something from scratch. Three cities size of San Francisco, 50 million square foot space. But that is still in a microcosm of seeing $3 trillion coming and pumping into rebuilding the infrastructure for advanced manufacturing. I'm an eternal optimist. I think Randy's data points actually validate some of my thoughts, right? So instead of gloom and dooms, I hope what Carl Sagan video meant to say, and we're going to play it sometime over the next 2 days so you guys get the full perspective. It is a pale blue dot. We're in a small speck of dust in a big cosmos. And we got to really not let our mind be consumed about a lot of negativity, but think about the future. When the highway system was built and horse-driven carriage systems disappeared, it was a change. When the tractor came in, the farmer used to plow with the animal, that disappeared. That was a disrupting news for the farmers. But guess what? We became capable of feeding 7.5 billion people on this planet Earth. So every major change, which AI is major, creates a new opportunity. And I think, Randy, I hope you agree with me.
Yeah, I do. And I think to be successful here on the earth, you have to be a person, a being that is okay with change. Because one of my favorite sayings is that the only constant is change.
Yep.
And so that's, you know, the people that can constantly adapt to new opportunities. And but like I say, the analogy you brought up about going from horse-drawn carriages to automobiles, that's the place we're at right now. That was about 100 years ago. Okay, that's where we're at right now. And if we can, working with the smartest minds on earth, you know, create this city that you can live, work, and play in, and that is carbon neutral and it's fully sustainable. That's a wonderful place to live.
Absolutely. So again, to the students, to all of you, if this is something exciting and you want to learn more about it or want to be part of it, we're going to be doing a lot of sort of a proof case studies and stuff with the Sandow projects through the Institute. So get in touch with me. We'll talk more about it. But let's give a very big round of applause to Randy. Thank you so very much.